Good morning, everybody. I'm going to wait just a couple minutes because we're expecting, I see now we're starting to get some people coming in. So just thought I'd welcome everybody to Coverings in Las Vegas. I am in Las Vegas, right? Yeah, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Bart Bettiga. I'm the Executive Director of the National Tile Contractors Association. The NTCA is one of the five owning associations of the show Coverings. We're excited to be back. It feels like our show is back. We were in Orlando last year in July, through the COVID process, but we're really expecting a great 4 days, and we're happy that you're all with us, for sure. I'm going to start the session here, and we can go a little bit long, but I think there's a program that comes at 12:30. So our program is called Successful Exterior Installations and Innovative Technology. I mean, we've got 6 excellent panelists that are going to talk about specific cases. I could sit up here with slides talking about new technology. I think the most important thing is we actually get our members. Every member of that's up here of the NTCA is actually a 5-star contractor, and that's a company recognition program that we've offered for about the last 10 years. And I'm happy to answer questions about that at our booth for any of you that might be interested in that. This program is an AIA and IDCEC accredited program, as are all the sessions at Coverings, and there are forms in the back of the room. At this point, I want to just let each of our speakers, we're not going to go into some long introduction, but I want our speakers to introduce themselves and tell you just a little bit about their business and where they're located. And we're going to start with Erin on the end.
Hi, Erin Albrecht, J&R Tile. We are in San Antonio, Texas. We do residential and commercial tile and stone.
I'm Woody Sanders. I'm with D.W. Sanders Tile and Stone Contracting out of Atlanta, Georgia, and we do residential, and in this particular segment of the market, we actually take commercially.
Dan Lambert out of Vail area, Colorado. We primarily specialize in high-end custom homes, do a lot of exterior applications.
Dirk Sullivan, Hawthorne Tile, Portland, Oregon. We primarily do high-end residential custom installations.
Martin Brooks, San Francisco Bay Area, high-end residential contractor.
John Cox, we're from San Antonio. We're 5-star. Our focus is high-end residential. That's our bread and butter.
So we got a little bit of both. We've got some commercial, some residential, and we're from the East Coast all the way out to the West Coast. And so, really the learning objectives here are pretty simple. Look at some case studies on new technology, some examples of that technology, gauged porcelain tile, panels and slabs in particular. I want to talk to Erin a little bit about a countertop project that she did, and slabs. And then really getting into the exterior installations. We think that exterior installations have great potential for us to increase per capita consumption of tile, in particular systems like the pedestal systems, 2 and 3 centimeter porcelain tiles and pavers as examples of that. So with that, what I'd like to do is I really would like to be able to have any of you asking any questions or interacting with our panelists, but we're going to ask that we do that at the end. We're going to go through each of the jobs real quickly, and then we can certainly talk about a specific job at that point. So at this point, I'm going to ask Erin to maybe just introduce your fire station project. I think it was 2 different fire stations.
That's
and
right.
I have a little video that we're going to play in a second, but maybe you just tell us a little bit about this job, what was unique about this job as it relates to gauged porcelain tile, panels, and slabs.
Sure. So this project was clearly a commercial project in Bexar County. That's Bulverde is just north of San Antonio, and the architect that was working on this project, I had known from a previous project and had asked for some help on his shower systems after having some shower failures at some other commercial projects. So we came in and sat down in pre-construction, where I think a lot of these new technologies can emerge when you're having these conversations in pre-construction, suggesting some materials. And what we had found is they really wanted a sanitary environment for the staff that wasn't like something that you had seen in a traditional commercial setting where you'd see typically 2x2 and 4 1/4. They were really interested in having full gauge panel porcelain on the walls. We had everything was from the same manufacturer. The smallest tile that was actually on the project was a 28 by 28 floor tile. So you'll see envelope cut to the drains, curbless entries. Everything was profiles and large format tile. It turned out really well. They had laminate specified as the countertops, and they were interested to see what that price would be compared to the gauge porcelain countertops, specifically 4 millimeter, 3 millimeter thickness with a full profile on the front. A lot of the labor that's included in these gauge porcelain panels, it's not just the handling, the manpower, the cost of the material, but the fabrication of it. So you'll see in the video, there's a full profile over a foam substrate with, of course, the mortar coverage completely collapsed.
So I have a clip here, and let's see how much of it shows, Aaron. So let's see where this
Sure.
goes.
So that was
The
substituted for
second
the
fire
laminate.
station, it's a much larger station than the original. The first one is about 13,000 square feet. This one's about 20. The second station has a few more showers and bunk rooms and so forth. It's a bigger station. We had already made the decisions for tile for the showers and toilet rooms on Bearable Verde, so we kind of carried that same system into this project, especially with the certified installers and so forth. We had a proven material and system that would work well in the second station.
This is a large investment for the community, and we wanted to make sure that it was an investment that was going to last, that was going to hold up, especially in bathrooms where we have, say 12 firemen in this fire station that are bathing multiple times a day because of nasty calls that they go on and things like that. We're going to be using this station for years and years to come.
Everybody that saw the system that was going into the showers and, the countertops was like, wow, this system is really nice. It's just, we've never seen it. It was a first for everyone that was there.
Conceptually, the large format tile on floors and walls with minimum grout joints with the same assembly components and grouts is now a concept for fire stations that will be built after this initial one. Anytime our installation team learns a new skill, we consider that a success here at J&R. They're growing professionally. We have more to offer to our customers and clients.
So that's a pretty cool video, by the way, that you guys did. Sorry for I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, but they're trying to get through it. But tell me a little bit about the countertop itself. How are you viewing the countertop market for you? I mean, this is relatively
Well,
new that we're going down on the countertops. Yeah.
You can't put LVT on the countertop. So
like that.
I mean, that's one of the things. Like where can these products go that other products can't? And commercially, I'm sitting up here with a lot of high-end residential colleagues, but commercially, I can see this going really well, just for the durability, and then taking all that labor out of the equation by not having that mitered edge, right? That epoxy edge, where traditionally that would be a condition where there could be damage. You can have a stainless steel or anodized aluminum trim.
How about the training? How about your crews to be trained on these type of products? This is an investment in your company. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right, Bart. We have, we've been doing gauge porcelain for a while, but specifically on these countertops, it has been really since 2017. I think we did we were with John on a coverings house on an installation design showcase. I think that was our first one that we did. So that was actually the initial 2017, 2018. And when we saw these big spaces and those long runs of the countertops, we thought, well, what a great application to have a 10-foot, a 10-foot run or 163 or 156 inches with minimal seams and really return it up to that backsplash where we could minimize the waste and really use it as a fabricator would. Where can we maximize the material value? And that's what we did on this project. They actually configured that island a little more around the size of our slab. That drop down, that wooden one that you see. And all the firefighters just can't believe that it's not real wood or marble. They think, it touches and it's so realistic now, the technology.
Yeah, and I heard them say that possibly this could be a model to be used in other fire stations. The other thing I heard in the video is I think it was the architect talked about using certified installers, which led me to believe that you had really promoted that certification to your customers.
That's our bread and butter, right? So, yes, those conversations in pre-construction are pretty easy because then it's very much we're going to make sure that we use qualified labor language in these specifications saying must be an NTCA 5-star contractor, must employ certified tile installers. Certified tile installers must be on site during the installation process with a copy of the TCNA handbook. And all sorts of crazy language that we have in there.
That's great.
GPT guidelines and handbooks. So that language really made it stick. It doesn't always happen. I know there's other 5-star commercials out there that you don't get all of them, but when you follow up and use your resources, it comes to be a successful project, especially when it comes to something like this, because we're not competing with the traditional commercial installer.
For those of you that don't know, we are having an advanced certification of tile installers tests taking place and training here on the show floor, and Gage Porcelain Tile Panels is an actual certification that we're out promoting. So, congratulations on this particular job. Thanks, Aaron. We'll go back if they want to ask. Woody, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're specifically talking about high-end residential jobs in the Atlanta market, right? Tell us about this. I believe utilizes pedestal systems.
Right. This was actually previously a music industry rapper, I guess. That house that then a homeowner had bought, and they were repurposing the pool decks and the decks around it. It was a very contemporary house in the architecture, and they were looking for alternative methods to basically get a tile or a finished deck. Previously, it had concrete type pavers over it, and we were brought in to look at the project. This all is over wood framing, which offered some challenges because we had to go through and canvas, as we do with all pedestal projects, the elevations, and we found some areas that were deficient in compression strength, so we went to spread basins on some of the pedestals.
He's trying to fix what's blinking here, so we'll just what goes in. I'm just curious into selecting how many different pedestal systems are out there. What's your role, or how did you go about selecting what you chose?
When we jumped into the pedal, we were challenged about 6-7 years ago to look at a pedestal project. And I think, being curious always and being open to opportunities, we said, yeah, we can do that. We'd never done it, but we figured we'd figure it out. And then I started kind of preaching it to the industry, I think. Early on, we saw it but really as an alternative to all the exterior decks we're seeing, that with all the waterproofing details and all the failures we were really seeing were hard bonded tile. It can be done successful with a qualified contractor, but we saw this as a alternative, and we kind of just jumped in with both feet. And I am, as most of my colleagues up here, a high-end residential guy, but this one product has been the one product we've been able to venture into the commercial market with, because mainly it's speed. We're not on site long enough to get in trouble, if you will, and because it's a new product. But the other side of that, it's right now pedestals are the Wild West. There's a lot of you've got two industries. We've got the 2-centimeter porcelain manufacturers. This was a landmark on this one.
How thick was this material?
This is 2 cm,
Okay.
3/4 or 20 mil. So you have that side of it. Then you have a lot of pedestal manufacturers, both from Europe and domestically. We like bison. That's just our tell. We'll see other ones that use different ones. We all have our thoughts there. I like it because I think bison articulates quickly to various slopes in the roof system. This is using S151 because we need containment. We had to hard set the stairs, so this is basically folding wire lath over the membrane. We, on the top level, actually would mud that in to hold containment, and then it's holding the lath in place while we mud the risers and the steps, and then we could go back and hard set. And this was done because we needed to contain the upper deck, which you kind of see in that left-hand picture as the pedestals came in. This is a thing you have to have, that perimeter containment with pedestal systems.
What goes into training your crews on this? Tell me a little bit about training, and how do you price something like this?
Aaron, I think all of us, you'll find as well, we believe in certification through CTEF. We train tremendously. We take the expense of building mock-ups inside our own shops to work through detailing.
Do your mechanics need to be like a certified tile installer to do this kind of work on a pedestal system?
No, not right now.
Yeah.
I hope we'll get it there. I think there's a necessity there in anything. It is lower hanging fruit in the sense that we can a person who's keeps awareness that we can spin them up and get them trained fairly quickly in that, as opposed to those steps would take a master mechanic. The pedestals would be by younger guys.
Tell me a little bit about pricing. I mean, materials, labor, compared to a traditional bonded exterior installation like this.
You know, pavers, I don't know if it's because of the introduction into the market or right now, are fairly, the 24 by 24 2 cm in my markets in the $6, $7 square foot, if you can get it. The logistics these days. Labor, in our standpoint, the pedestals are around $4, $5 square foot. As they get higher, they get increase in cost. And then labor, I'm kind of going to keep that to myself.
Yeah.
As much as I can.
Yeah. I like it.
It's a good profit center. Last year we did about $750,000 in pedestal work.
That's phenomenal. So your builders like this system?
Builders, and as I said, it's the one product you're seeing it as urban density keeps getting the way it is. We're going to see the opportunity for it's a cheap living space when you talk about high rise, when you talk about condos, amenity packages.
Yeah, I agree. And just the movement towards exterior living space recently all around the country is really opening up, I think, the tile market, as we've lost a little bit of market share inside the LVT. Not that we don't want to get that back. This opportunity with these products really, I think, opens up our industry.
I think the other thing we miss sometimes is MEP through this, right? You can get your speakers, you can get your mosquito misting, you can get irrigation for planters. That all plays in this. Dirk will show something that's absolutely just out of this world cool.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to move to the mountains. So Dan, tell us a little bit about this particular job. Is this obviously a logistical issue, right?
Yeah, so this particular job was a hotel that we had some interior and exterior work going on, gauge porcelain tile panels around a spa that led to the outside. And obviously there's some logistical challenges with getting 5 foot by 10 foot pieces of porcelain through elevators and through hallways and so forth. So utilizing a crane, we were able to do all the demolition on the work, crate everything up, and then bring the crane in to deliver the panels and basically crane down all the demolition work. Made it very efficient and saved a ton of money as far as just labor cost.
Do you rent the crane, or do the builder? How did that work?
No, I rented the crane. Yeah.
What does that cost a day?
I think it was there for 2 hours and it was under $400.
Wow, what compared to trying to haul all that material up through elevators?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do it any other way.
So talk about the installation a little bit, Dan.
Oh, the installation on this was
Or is this the same job?
This is a different job here.
Okay, so let's move to this one. This is a
Okay.
2 centimeter, right?
Sure. So this one here, originally we had done the work and it had a cement tile installed, and it's south facing, sits about 8150 in elevation, and the north side of the project, where we did the same material, held up great, but the south side was basically just blown apart and spalling and having a lot of issues. So the builder asked what we could do to, emulate the same look. So we found a 2 centimeter porcelain tile and cut it into the same pattern.
What do you
and-
think
and
had
reinstalled
caused
it.
the failure, Dan? Do you know what actually caused the failure?
Yeah, I think that even though we had proper movement accommodation, EJ 171, and all the right materials, the best materials we could use on it, I really think that it was a matter of the material itself not holding together, just through so many freeze-thaw cycles just constantly throughout the day. Just
The actual tile or the setting
actual
materials?
tile, the
Okay.
actual tile, because it's just such an extreme environment.
So climactic conditions for you in the mountains, how do you plan installing these products on an exterior? Do you have to do it at a certain temperature, or talk about that?
Yeah, it's best practice to have the materials, the tile, the mortar, substrate, everything within a certain temperature range of each other. And then also keeping direct sunlight off of the installation while it's being installed. Those are all key components, and then keeping a consistent heat throughout the time that the mortar's curing.
And you also have done work with pedestal systems, is that right?
Correct.
So does this tell us about this?
Yeah, so this was another job in Vail. This particular one was over a suspended patio that had hydronic radiant heat, and so it was kind of new territory for the builder and for us as far as how the system would work. Started from at one side of the deck was about a 1/4 inch up, and at the far side of the deck was about 5 inches up, and had a hot tub sitting on it as well, toward the deeper end of it. So basically, all the concrete work was done to encapsulate the hydronic tubes, and then we did a liquid applied waterproof and anti-fracture membrane over top of that, flashed everything, and then did the pedestal system over top of that. It had a drainage system right toward the end where that hot tub is sitting, kind of like a gutter scupper system. And yeah, it's performed really well. You can see on the one picture there on the right that there's a good 8 inches or so of snow sitting on top of the hot tub cover and nothing on the porcelain.
How do you approach the builder with this? I mean, you have to introduce this type of technology to them, or are they aware of it?
They really weren't aware of it, and they weren't sure how to do it, but it's becoming a lot more prominent now that people don't want to have any kind of slope on their decks, and it's required. It really does need to be a 1/4 inch per foot minimum slope, and in order to actually get a system that people are happy with, this really seems to solve a lot of problems, because we can create a flat finished surface and have the proper draining underneath. And a lot of the issues that are common in exterior installations are grout issues. And these applications, there's no grout required. You just don't use grout. So that's one less thing to have to worry about.
Do the pedestal systems reps come in on training you how to use these materials, or what's the role there? I didn't ask Woody that, so I'll ask you.
Sure. Yeah, from my experience, the manufacturer reps are very helpful. They want to see their product succeed and be part of successful applications. And so they're usually more than happy to come out and do a tutorial.
And time to install compared to a bonded? I mean, can you put the pedestal system in and set it the same day? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the thing that I really like about these pedestal systems are we're not as concerned on the climatic conditions. We're just basically dealing with the pedestals themselves and the tile, and so typically with a direct bond application, and having to tent it and protect it from direct sunlight. These applications don't require that, and it saves a lot of time.
Thank you. All right, Dirk, we're good. So we've moved from San Antonio to Atlanta to Vail, or the mountains in Colorado, and now we're in Portland, right? So Dirk's going to talk about a pretty cool project this one was. So tell us a little bit about this, Dirk.
This is an interesting situation. This home, and unfortunately, I think it was, I don't have the exact date it was built, but it was around 35 to 40, sits on top of a spring. And so this homeowner who had recently purchased a house, they knew that essentially the basement or cellar space was pretty much unusable because it was always wet, always wet. And at one point, it had as much as 18 inches of water in it. And based around what's happening outside, the amount of rainfall, it was hydrostatic. It's all coming up from underneath. And so what they decided to do was, our builder came to us and asked what kind of flooring could we do here, and they were talking about what they wanted to do. They wanted to come in, put in a French drain, put in a high efficiency super industrial sump pump, and then a industrial dehumidifier with a pump. And there's a photo of that back there. But they were also able to carve out the concrete and put all the infrastructure for it inside of the concrete. And what it allowed us to do is come in with pedestals about 6 inches tall and just run the flooring. One of the other things the homeowner wanted to do was, and was a really fun person to work with, she wanted to light it from down below. And so this is the picture here is basically they're kind of testing out the rope lighting. It's a exterior grade rope lighting that kind of runs through a series of colors. They're just like right now, unfortunately the job's not done, so we don't have great photos of a complete project, but I was trying to get as much of it as I could in the photos. So on the left we have the dehumidifier and then the infrastructure for the pump.
So will that show through like the grout joints? Or
Yeah. Show through the grout joints. We use an
really
Ardex
cool
pedestal that also has an adapter that makes the joint 3/16 of an inch, and so that's what we chose to do because it would allow more light to come through.
And is that what it's going to look like here?
Yeah, that'll be what the whole floor looks like eventually. And that other photo kind of on the left shows basically that it's just rope lighting running through it, but it projects pretty well.
And are you doing a lot of pedestal work in the Portland area?
Yeah.
And you're mostly high-end residential,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. We've done a number of large exterior jobs similar to what Woody was showing, and very successfully. There's no callbacks. It's a no-brainer. Our crew adapts to it very quickly. Cutting the 2cm pavers is relatively painless with the right equipment. When it comes to like a snap cutter or the right type of bridge saw.
And what's your role in introducing this technology to your builders?
Anybody who will listen, I'm talking about it. They talk about exteriors. We are bringing this up as the only option we're going to have available, just because it's. Let me just put it this way: I've got a deck an exterior deck that I did, 2-inch mud. Everything was done right. That I'm still maintaining after 20 years for the fourth owner of the house. Luckily for them, my name gets passed around. And I'm just like, that's just horrible. Nobody, I mean, it's one thing, it's an honor to go back and look at your work and see that it's surviving, but it's even when it's properly installed in Portland, Oregon, the weather's demanding on the system. The expansion and contraction, expansion joints they get blown out after a few years. And it's just not a great deck. Plus, this allows you an exterior
Demanding because of so much rain or because of freeze-thaw cycles?
Freeze-thaw cycles is part of it. In Portland, Oregon, we might get 1 or 2 hard freeze-thaw cycles a year, but the summer months are the hardest on it because, you can take a temperature reading of a deck and it's over 200 degrees, and at night it's like under 50.
Wow.
And so that's a huge swing, man. Things are moving and shaking. And I've gone in and seen expansion joints that are so tight that the silicone joint is just bumped up, and then come back later and it's just spread apart back to 3/16 of an inch.
That's cool. Thanks, Dirk. All right, Martin, now we're in San Francisco, right? And I think you experienced some similar issues to Dan, logistics. I think I do have a picture, but we could maybe just tell us a little bit about the job.
So this is a high-end residential condominium project we did. We got all the inside tile and the outside tile. And what we find we've been doing pedestals for about 10 years, but 10 years ago, it's like 1 or 2 jobs here and there. Now, quite a large portion of our jobs have a pedestal system component to them. Even the high-end residential homes, if people know where Pacific Heights are, have a pedestal system incorporated into the scope of work. And we're finding that it's the architects who are now seeing the benefit of these systems for a maintainable roof and waterproof system underneath. There's been so many failures with exterior decks that they're honestly sick and tired of having to pull all the tile and the mud bed out. And you can imagine doing a job like this. That would be a large project to undertake to repair a membrane and even find where that leak is on a project like this. So with a pedestal system, you just pop up a few tiles and you're able to easily maintain that waterproof membrane underneath. And the architects love that. It takes away all the efflorescence problems, it takes away any latex leaching, any drainage problems, and it just gives them a nice, pretty much flat surface that's usable that would probably be difficult to achieve without a pedestal system.
So if they don't, I mean, I think this is incredible, by the way this project looks. What alternative, what competitive product would they use if they don't use tile or a pedestal system?
Well, this would either not be a usable space because of the topography of the roof underneath, or they'd probably have to use a Trex or maybe an IP or some wood underneath, but they'd still probably have to use a pedestal system to form bearers to make that work with a wood product underneath. But what we're finding is, like, people don't want the wood fades, the Trex fades, it's not as inviting, it's not as high-end looking as a tile surface like this, which really gives people, you know, a sense of like wealth. And when they're buying these units for $2-3 million, they don't want to see a surface that doesn't hit the mark. So this is common area. This is for everybody who buys a condo in that building to use. So they look.
Is there a lot of this in downtown San Francisco?
Yeah,
I mean,
this is in Japantown, so it's not too far from downtown. But and you know, this I think was probably around 2,000 feet. 2,500 square feet.
And you had to get it up there too. You rented a crane. Did you have to do that?
Well, we piggybacked on the contractor. He let us use that. And we're finding that we're actually implementing more of the piggybacking on the contractors. Unlike Dan at $400, we're about $1,200 an hour for a crane.
Well, everything's more expensive in San Francisco.
Yeah, but not only $1,200, they have to get a permit. They have to get many permits. They have to get a street permit. They have to get a permit to block off parking. And it's a logistical nightmare, but if you can do it, you can only imagine the time it saved trying to take that up 6-7 floors. And we have another residential project we're doing right now, which is on the 11th floor, and they actually removed a window and craned everything in a crane like Dan used, and they were able to just get it in there. So we're finding that the use of cranes is really advantageous to us.
And this is your guys doing the pedestal system, right?
Yep.
You've looked at lots of different ones. What do you use?
Well, like Woody said, it's a Wild West out there, so we want a reputable manufacturer who we can trust. This was Profilitech. We're always looking for that reputable company that will stand behind the product because we don't want it to fail, and we're just looking for quality. We don't care about the cost, we care about the quality. And again, on the topography of the roof, it's very important to know that, because from $5 up to $15 and up, you can really sell yourself short if you don't know. And usually at bid stage, you don't know the topography of the roof, but you've got to try to determine that so you know the cost of the pedestal, because that is a really large dollar amount within your contract right there.
You're in a very strong market, San Francisco market, Martin. Do you have a lot of competitors that are doing this kind of work, or are you pretty unique out there?
Yeah, well, we've been doing it long enough. Our first couple went really slow because it's a learning curve. Like Gabriel has been with me over 25 years, is extremely talented. He takes his time, he thinks it through. Now he's become a master at doing pedestals, not only a master at doing tile, he's a master at doing pedestals. And he's taught the other guys how to also do this with, with layout and stuff. So we find our biggest competitor is a landscape contractor who really doesn't have the knowledge or the expertise to do it. They'll come in, and then there's usually a complaint that it rocks, it rolls, it's not flat. And so contractors who we work with who know the product that we deliver don't go anywhere else but us right now. They're having us do it, and they take it out the landscaping contractor.
That's great. And then I guess this is just a few more of the pictures, and is that the finished product on the right?
Yeah, and I'll note that on a side note that we did do one coastal, and the guy wanted it completely flat because he didn't want to feel like he was walking downhill or anything. That was one of probably the biggest mistakes I made. I should have put a fall on it. As you can see, when this is like San Francisco fog that collected on there, and this drains. We've got a fall on this, so it does drain. But the one we did coastal, actually, because of water tension, will now hold water on there, and we can't, because all the edge detail and the way that it's built, we can't alter that right now, and so he has to. Is a little concerned about the water standing. I've told him it's not a problem, and he goes on there with a squeegee every time it rains, and he squeegees it off. But we'd have been better off putting a slight fall on it, not to keep it as flat as he wanted to.
So, yeah, I didn't ask Woody or Dan, what goes into substrate prep for the pedestal systems? I'm just curious.
Well, you need to be sure that you put an isolator on. And first of all, the first call you need to make is to the roofing manufacturer of the waterproof system to make sure that the waterproof system is actually adequate to take the weight of the point load of the pedestals. You really need to make sure you make that call. Not all roofing membrane systems can take the weight of that point load from the pedestal, so you need to clear that first. And then we typically put isolators on there, and then the pedestal system, and away we go.
That's excellent. Okay, and then that's I guess the last finished project right there. It's just beautiful.
And the real estate developer and the builder are extremely happy. And it's a well-known architect in San Francisco. He's extremely happy. We're hoping he comes back and has us do more of those decks for him.
That's great. Okay, John. So this one was also a failure, right? I believe that
That's
you got
correct.
involved in. Yeah.
Yeah, we were called out because the balcony was holding water and didn't have sufficient drain on it. And this is part of the demo. When we were demoing it, we had to be careful because in the summer times we have these storms that just blow up. And so we were really, really careful about taking up the tile in the mud without damaging the primary waterproofing, so that way, because there was living space underneath the balcony. So this just shows the taking this up. We have a unique, and come to find out it's not really unique to San Antonio, is we have a challenge that the architects do not put slope in the substructure. And we're actually currently working on a paper, a cautionary letter for balconies that don't have slope. And so in the next slide, what we did is we actually floated with mud a 1/4-inch slope, and after completing it, the builder came in, superintendent said, "You guys got to have to take it off. It weighs too much." It was an existing home, and said, "You're going to have to take it off because it's too much weight." And said, "You're going to pay me to do it," which they did, and we actually came back and put an 1/8-inch slope because of the weight factor. And they had TPO. What we do is when we put one down, before we put it down, we actually get the roofer to do the primary waterproofing. That way the liability is on them. You saw these columns where they had to be, waterproofed up. I had some pictures. It was funny because everybody sees pictures of waterproofing when they use, say, Red Guard or whatever product, and they do the corners and think that an installation is waterproof when it does the corners. And I don't have that slide in there, but we had to be careful about the doors, the door height, when the tile slid underneath it. That way it wouldn't be higher. Our mud, the mud was higher when we had 1/4 inch. It was almost to the bottom of the door. And so we came back, when we took it out, we end up lowering it down and also lowering the weight of the material.
You do a lot of mud work in San Antonio?
We do a lot of mud work. That's one of our fortes. I've been in the business for 47 years, and when I first started, everything that we did was mud. There was cement board really wasn't developed. Paul Dinkle had developed Wonder Board, but there really wasn't a lot of it being used. And so mud was something that we learned. It was just something we did every single day. We mudded almost every single floor. Everything in San Antonio is on a concrete slab. So we don't, second, the only thing is wood structure is upstairs. And so, mudding floors was, just something that came natural. And so I swore that whenever, I started in business that we were going to continue to do mud, because there's a lot of things that you can do with mud that you cannot do with foam board, backer boards, whatever radius is, curves. It's very difficult to do that. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's very difficult. With mud, it's really easy. And once you understand the dynamics of doing it, it's fail-proof. It's a great product.
Another certification that the CTEF is doing, the advanced certification, is mud walls and mud floors, and they're actually doing that on the show floor. So earlier when we looked at Aaron's project, we talked about the gauge porcelain tile panels and substrate prep. Those are two of the advanced certifications, but also mud floors and mud walls. So all of that's getting promoted. So then you had to reinstall, right, Dan or John?
Yeah, we had to reinstall everything, and we were originally going to do a tile base, but because the roofer did such a poor job turning up the TPO on the corners, that I told them we couldn't put base, and so they end up using this copper flashing, which it came out pretty nice. It just rained that day when I took that picture. It's not holding water like it looks like it is, but
It's beautiful material.
But yeah, and the one thing that I said, you're going to have to use a large material to shed the water. That way it doesn't hold in the grout joints. And we end up using a 24 by 24. And then, of course, we have moving accommodation joints around the columns, and the perimeter. And actually where that doorway is, we had a perimeter joint there also. And you see the slope from on that back wall. You see the slope that was built in. And this is, I have these slides because this is a unique balcony that we're going to be doing. This is on a large home. It's 80 feet long from one end to the other. And the architect, when I first arrived on the job to look at it, the roofer came up and he goes, "You're not going to like it," because he knows how adamant I am about a 1/4 inch slope. And I said, "What do you mean I'm not going to like it?" He goes, "You're only going to be able to get 1/8 of an inch slope." And so, the first thing I did was call the builder and say, "That's BS." He said, "Well, let me call the architect," talk to the architect. We scheduled a meeting. He came out and said, "Well, I had a 1/4 inch slope drawn." And it's like, "Well, Mac, it's not." So we end up having to put an 1/8 of an inch slope. But what we did to try to vacate the water is, all the way around he wanted a 3/4 inch reveal. And the only way we could achieve that is plotting these points going back to the house where there's ridges and valleys. And I'll show you the next slide. That's the impact it's going to have. It's going to be a 4x8. I sketched this out. There was a 4x8 paver that we're going to have to cut all those different points, lay it out and cut it as we go. I told them it's going to add 2 weeks, not only floating it, but also cutting all these pieces is going to add 2 weeks to the time frame of the job, which they agreed. I actually made a mock-up with foam and took this to the architect, which he was, at first he said it can't be done. And then after he saw the mock-up, he goes, "Well, that's remarkable. I'm glad that you pointed it out." And what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate architects, design professionals, that they have to use slope in the substructure. We can't use pedestals because the balconies are flat. There's no way to vacate the water. And so that's what we're working on, a diagram. We're working on some type of a method where universally it can be used everywhere where people will have success instead of failure.
So you're talking about the subcommittee that we have through the NTCA that's going to be in the reference manual, in the NTCA
Yes, sir.
reference manual?
Yes, sir. We're trying to, we've got a panel of guys that are working to develop this standard. Again, a means of making successful installations instead of problematic.
That's great. And that when we do those documents, we work not only with the installers or contractors, we work with the setting material and the tile manufacturers in those subcommittee process as well. Does anybody have any questions about any of these? I have a couple of other questions. But, Cody, did you have one? Is there? No. Yes, sir. Back there.
A few years ago when 2 CM pavers just came out, pedestals, and then it seems like they hit the brakes for a
So, and I believe it's 2 cm and some 3 cm. Does somebody want to take a shot at that?
Well, I would always check with the paver manufacturer to see if it is actually, it can be used in a paver system, and it is an elevated system. So I think it's important that you really check that before you proceed.
I think there's two things. Reputation of manufacturer. That's always going to be paramount, because I want representation. I want to be able to have those conversations. The other thing you've got to watch for is what we call implosion, especially on pedestals. So you have different manufacturers that make different statements. Some want a 5 dot on the pedestal. On that particular job you saw I did, those were double mesh back. We actually had the manufacturer double mesh back those tiles because we were going to get into elevations. And that, so what I'm worried about is, I'm not worried about a tile cracking. That's picking it up and putting it back in. And exterior tile will crack, so that I consider that maintenance. What I am worried about is somebody's got a big teak heavy table or chair and they lift it up and they point load back onto a tile. And I don't care if it cracks. I just don't want them to go through. So I look at that more as a safety issue. Manufacturers are making. We're working. I'm actually working on the NTCA reference manual. We're actually writing some stuff right now. It'll take a while for us to get it all through, but this is some of the points that we're considering. We actually, in some cases, we're using bridging and fiber grate. We're actually doing a project where we'll do an ashlar pattern with a pedestal system. So we're pressing. This is just the beginning. We're pressing this stuff. Look at John's stuff. Looks like slate. I wouldn't put slate outside to save my soul, right?
It was a porcelain tile.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's
right.
the beauty of porcelain tile now, right?
Yeah,
You
but
saw
the porcelain
Aaron's
tile, right.
Aaron's countertop. Look, that brings marble to a fire station countertop, right?
And we did a 2 cm on a porch, and one of the problems we had, it had natural stone on it, no direct sunlight whatsoever, so it always stayed moist, and the efflorescence was a problem. They end up having green, the algae and mold growing on it. So what we end up doing is we tore it all out, we refloated it, and we put down a 2 cm that looked like the slate that they had outside on their walkways. And we actually we couldn't get bullnose in a timely manner, so we put a 180-degree bullnose with a profile blade and throwed the edge where it looked like it was like that from the factory.
By the way, I have seen failures where the pedestals have not been set correctly, and you'll get them where they're only probably touching on 3 points or 2 points, and you'll get point load, and it will shear off in a triangle on the corner just because it can't take the weight. But to Woody's point, we've done many installations where we've used fiber grate too as a support underneath, and we've used McNichols, and we tie it all together and make a kind of a floating platform on top, which lets us do natural stone on top without a problem. So we do that too.
Yes, sir. Had a question, sir.
Yeah, you want to use a supporting system underneath.
We did a project where we did Indiana limestone, but we worked with ILI and got the modulus of rupture, worked with the engineers on it. We ended up having, those were 2 foot by 4 foot, but the paver thickness was 2 1/4 inch. We went 2 1/4 inch Indiana limestone, which you can imagine raises labor, becomes logistics. We had to build special carts to actually used HVAC lifts to actually put each tile into place, because we couldn't get heavy equipment across the membrane.
Do you have to make sure that whatever stone is suitable for an exterior? Because some stones are very moisture sensitive, right?
Not so much of an issue with pedestal side, right? But what becomes, because this is so new, that you've got to get back into who's representing the stone. Where's the modulus of rupture happening? What can this actually be done? So there's a lot of investigation sometimes, and we're kind of out there on the edge sometimes on this.
I went to look at a job last week, and I'm not doing it. I just went to inspect, and they have 4 feet by 4 feet bluestone, 3 centimeters thick, and that piece weighed over 360 pounds. My first question is, have you cleared that with the roofing manufacturer, because that's a lot of weight on each pedestal? And they hadn't. And that would be my first call to see if that roof can actually take that weight.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then secondly, it's the poor guys who have to move that 360 pound. I mean, it's very limited how many people you can get around it, and it would be back-breaking work to actually install that.
So does the pedestal systems, this just came to me, do the pedestal systems open up the opportunity to bring stone outside? Because direct bonding creates such an efflorescence issue sometimes, right? So this might actually create opportunity for the natural stone
Right,
industry.
I think with Indiana, we do a lot of Indiana limestone pull decks. It's called alkaline staining. It looks like it's brown. People don't like that, obviously. I think it opens it up. I think the porcelain manufacturers will continue. Look, that project is from Landmark. They called a whole line. They call it the Bluestone Project. They're knocking off everything from true blue to full range. We're seeing it. I think you'll see textures become more of a thing. I think they're just all of us are just touching the beginning of this, right? We see the evolution of tile. We see what pavers will do. I think we'll have some other things to address in wind equalization in the future. We've got some things to still address, but we're getting there.
Anybody else? Niall?
Dan, on the exterior hot tub that you did, what cautionary things did you have to do, or what support did you have to change under the hot tub? Because I know the hot tub weighs a lot. Fill it up with water, it's really
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Niall. So basically, to accommodate the point load, we doubled up the pedestal system underneath of where the hot tub was set, because we knew that, filling that thing up with water is going to add a lot more weight. Adding bodies in there and movement and so forth, could shift things a little bit as well. So yeah, working with the tile manufacturer and having a good communication with the pedestal manufacturer, we were able to, come together with the proper steps to make that sustainable.
And I'll say this really quick. We did one which I wish I had pictures of, which was another large pedestal project that had a hot tub. We actually had the hot tub installed first. And the hot tub got installed and leveled out, and then we went around the outside of it. And one of the things we've been doing with our pedestals and exterior is anywhere it comes in point of contact with something, we take those, I buy them at Office Depot, the little clear rubber bumpers, and we actually put them on with Curtifix. We don't use the adhesive, we put them on with Curtifix on everywhere. So anywhere the pedestal, or anywhere the paver is hitting an obstruction, it's up against rubber. And so that was because they wanted to put it on top, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, I don't think that's a good plan, at least in this situation.
And ours was the same on that residential condo there. We put the tub in first, and they actually liked it because it greatly reduced the height they needed to get in the tub, so it made easy use a lot better.
Did you have something else you wanted to say, Dan, or no?
Oh, I was just going to say that using the little clear rubber bumpers is a great idea. We've been doing that as well.
Okay.
Just because without that, there is, a little bit more of a detail where it's loose around the perimeter, and you want to keep all that tight. The material itself will expand and contract with, sunlight and so forth, temperature variations and so forth. So this allows that to be able to still happen, but not be so loose that when people are walking over it, that things are shifting and becoming more loose as time goes.
I think we have a couple more questions. I'm about 5 minutes left. I'm going to go to you next. Yeah. Did you hear? I didn't hear the question. Okay.
Yeah, it's called McNichols, and it's a fiber grate, and they come like 8 feet by 2 feet, and then you tie them all together, and it floats on top of the pedestal system, and then you put the stone on the pedestal.
Cheap. About $1,200 a sheet.
So you have to. You don't always have to use that? Or?
Don't. Well, so we've done projects where we've intermixed wood tiles into porcelain tiles, and then put turf, and then we did pedestals, and we used fiber grate to hold up that, and then turf was put over that area. So it allows, where the landscape architect's going with it, there's some cool design features.
You have a question back there, sir? What would be weight? Width. Anybody?
Well, it's as wide as the tile, so it's not determined by the pedestal. Oh, wind.
Wind.
Well, so Woody'll, but there's only Miami-Dade have a wind shear for pavers right now, and I think Woody knows more about that.
I had my interpreter up here because hearing wind equalization or wind uplift, right? There are some of the pedestal. Here's the Wild West, right? And you've got, and this is what we're trying to, I think, trying to kind of pull together right now. You have pedestal manufacturers that are making trays that require you to take an adhesive and adhere it to the tray, and then it grommets down onto the pedestal. So you've got that way of dealing with the equalization. You've got in that. So you've got other ones that are making PVC trays that are going there. So this is the answer at the moment. I'm hoping some innovation will come through the porcelain manufacturers. I've got my own ideas there. But when we get into those projects, there becomes a lot of detailing on perimeters. It just gets to the point where, hey, I've got to bring an engineer, and a lot of times the pedestal manufacturers, because they're doing that testing. Right now, the only standard out there is Miami-Dade, and that's a bonded system. That's not a floating system. So they're testing to that. We've seen some good results, but I'm looking for an engineer to sign off on it before. I don't have a PE behind my name.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have is edge containment, because not all pedestal systems have an edge containment system. So you have to get a little creative. We've figured ways how to do it, but otherwise it's very unsightly on the edge because you've got a big gap there, a big void. So edge containment, I think, is something that the pedestal system makers need to work on to find a system that looks good and actually works.
It's interesting, as I'm hearing this, at NTCA, we're always promoting about following industry standards, installation standards. But as you're seeing, as tile contractors and five-star contractors, you can't really develop a standard sometimes until you have 3, 4, 5 years of actual practice in the field that works. And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of forethought, a lot of meeting and partnering with manufacturers to proactively install projects before we can actually develop a standard. So,
and because we're on the front line, Bart, a lot of it is trial and error too. We have to experiment, and sometimes it's not, it doesn't always work out so well, but we have no choice because we're on that front line. We're on the cutting edge of technology.
I've just got about a minute left, unless there's another question. I wanted to ask about, there's another seminar taking place here at the show on 2 and 3 centimeter material dry laid in sand. When I was in Europe about 4 years ago, they were really promoting that at your side, the actual dry laid installations. When I talked to some of you earlier, some of you felt the landscapers might be doing that. Some of you felt as the tile contractors you might be doing it. What do you want to talk about that? Actually, have you done any of it?
Absolutely. I'm always going to say the tile contractors need to be doing it. And I'll say this in all fairness to that because we understand silica, right? With the protocols coming out and that, generally speaking, landscapers are with cut-off saws and they don't understand how to cut properly. That just saying. And that we're doing a lot of sand, what we call sand bed pavers. We're doing them as steppers with the landscape where astroturf or turf is being put around them. We're doing patios where we're coming up with, in our area, I'll use some terms, 57 gravel. You have to excavate about 9 inches. It's 57 to number 9. We put a drainage fabric in, and then we're going with a product in our market called M10, which is it's a granite dust, if you will. And it just lets all that water drain through, and we're leaving the joints open. To your saying, we're actually, believe it or not, using, if you looked at particular pedestal manufacturers, we have spacer tabs that they put on. We're actually using the spacer tabs to hold everything. Again, you have to have some containment. You can't just let this float. There's probably some opportunities for driveways out there as opposed to hard bonded, because what we're doing, we're living in expansion joints, grout joints, things that are kind of nemesis in our industry.
In Mississippi, where I live, you've got all these patios, but they crack and there's so much movement. I would think that just laying it in a sand bed might, I'd like to be a guinea pig for that, to be honest
I
with
can
you.
foresee where the innovation of some of the allied manufacturers that will actually, I can foresee that we'll see some uncoupling type dry lathe systems where the top can just be placed
Yeah.
into it. I see that coming. I see that coming as this market kind of takes off.
Dirk, did you have a comment on this? I thought you were trying to say something.
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm good.
Okay. I'm just going to finish up. I want to go back to Aaron real quick because we got into the pedestal systems, which is great, but the gauge porcelain tile panel market is really, really hot right now. And I'm just wondering, Aaron, where you see the market going for you commercially. You've invested in your people. What advice would you give to, smaller contractors? This is not a one-person type job. Investment in tools is expensive. Your thoughts on the actual gauge porcelain tile panel market?
Absolutely. The tools are an investment. The training for your staff is an investment. And I think just like the guys with the pedestals and talking about, educating that architect, that landscape architect, the hydroponic system, right? And just some of the creativeness. John educating his client. I think the more that we educate the architectural and design community, the more we're going to see these new products, but they simply don't know about them if we're not going to let them know. And one thing that 5-star contractors can do is give continuing education units on several things, and I think 2C and pavers would be a great one to add to the arsenal. If we don't have it already, I don't think we do. I think we definitely should, because that's a huge market for us to go after.
Yeah, I know the Europeans really view the 2CM and 3CM market as really a untapped potential, and it is selling in Europe and other parts of the world. So I'd like to see the tile guys do some of that.
And
Just
to
like I'd like to
finish
see the
your
tile guys,
question-
the tile people doing the countertops, the porcelain tile countertops, even though there may be fabricators that are starting to look at that.
And once they specify it, like the fire station, they'll continue to. So I think it's just one architect at a time, one designer at a time, and it will continue to flourish.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to thank our 6 panelists, and please give them a round of applause. And look forward to seeing you all on the show floor. Come on and see us. Thank you.